It's coming up, I'm sure.
Oh, because there's a delay.
I don't think so. No, I mean, video should be working. The only delay I added was to the audio. So, I mean, it's working.
Here
we are. Yeah. Hey.
Yep. Okay. So if you're joining us, thank you for bearing with us while we get some things figured out. Welcome. So, welcome to the DNC Marketing Facebook page. I'm Darian.
I'm Julio.
And this is our Tuesday tackle topic kind of thing that we're doing. This series is all about staying motivated and different things that we do to stay motivated. Last week we talked a little bit about some problems that come with staying motivated, why we can't stay motivated. And this week we want to talk about getting you into routines and some really cool goal setting techniques that can help you stay motivated.
Yeah.
What I find the problem is when I don't know what I'm doing, when I am not sure how to proceed with a project, that's when I start to lack motivation. Or when I've set too big of goals and I'm not exactly sure how to chunk them down and tackle them properly, that's when my motivation starts to wane and I will start to procrastinate. Mostly, welcome Carolyn, hi! Mostly, It's just because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do. And the best process for me is to just dive right into a project and start to figure it out. And then I know what I'm doing. Then I can start to create things like SMART goals or use the Foursquare method or the Eisenhower Box as it's called. And I want to talk about that because I found some interesting information about it. And then what was that other thing? SCRUM Boards. I am a huge fan of SCRUM Boards. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So we had a whole bunch of people jump into the public group and talk to us about the post we put out yesterday, which was all about staying motivated. And basically what we asked was for you guys to tell us what are your experiences with goal setting and, what do you do to stay motivated? What are your routines like? And we had Carolyn jump in. Let's see. We had Regine jump in, and Regine had actually a great post that I want to talk about as well in here. And she talked about her frustrations with staying motivated and when you don't necessarily have the validation that you need to keep going, but you need to set those habits, right? And so part of this is setting habits in the things that you do. And as you set those habits and you start to build brand awareness, for example, so let's say going live, am I rambling a little bit?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Let's say you want to go live and, it's the first time your group has seen you go live or your Facebook page, you've never done it before. You're creating brand awareness at this point and you're not going to get validation right away. You're not going to get feedback right away because you're now training the people who follow you to know that you're going to be going live at a certain time, a certain day of the week, talking about certain things.
Right.
So sometimes it can take a while and we've experienced this on and off for many years every time we start a new project.
Yeah, because since it's just us two, every time we start a new project, we tend to go radio silent because we have to put our focus on something, and it's a lot of the times the thing that we end up deciding not to do is the content marketing behind it, especially when it comes to like organic posts as opposed to like paid posts. So we're getting back into that. That's why we're sending you so many emails, trying to get you to recall that, hey, on Tuesdays, they're going to be talking about this topic point. On Fridays, they're going to go do a live Q&A to where if I have questions or concerns, I can talk to them about it. Now, obviously, for those of us, or for those of you that are members, that's pretty much an open line regardless. But the live Q&As are going to be, you're going to see a lot more people coming in over the next month or two where it's going to be people that came in from masterclasses and things like that we're hosting. Excuse me. Speaking of masterclasses, just as a quick heads up, the masterclass that we're going to be doing we're doing one called Building a Better Brand. That one in its entirety is going to be posted to like the members only group. And then we're cutting it down and trying to, basically shave it down quite substantially, like almost in half, in order to use that for, towards like more like a free masterclass or webinar. So those of you that do have the course, y'all are getting a much bigger insight. And then we are going to be starting just generally working through the course step by step, module by module.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, sort of. So for those who are members, right, of
right.
the DNC Marketing course, you're going to get like a totally raw, uncut version of the masterclass. And then the cut version is what's going to be publicized for free everywhere else. And then we're going to start going into the members only Facebook group for the course and doing boot camps basically, and deep dives into like smaller sections so that we can make sure you're making progress and give you more helpful tips and tricks, and actually give you feedback and work with you as you create your copy, your content, emails, and all of those different things.
Thanks, Alfonso.
Okay. Yeah. What is he? He says, I think all businesses require consistency. Your first live shouldn't draw 300 right away. Keep it up. I'm here now because you said every Tuesday. That's right. Yes.
There you go.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Boom.
So it takes time, and the big thing with that is you need to manage your expectations too. So when you're going live for the first time, like Alfonso said, you're not going to draw 300 people.
Right.
We follow a lot of marketing people, as I'm sure you do. And if you'll watch the numbers on most of their lives, they're relatively small, even for people who've got like massive followings. Yeah. People just, they don't necessarily have the time to show up live every single time. But the fact that you have the video out there now gives you so many options. Mm-hmm. People can come back and watch them. You can create an ad with that video. You can share it in all kinds of places, and you can get eyes on your brand in that way. So just because you're not getting a whole bunch of people showing up live, or your initial videos aren't getting as much traction as you would like, don't let that discourage you. You have to manage your expectations, and you have to keep consistency, like Alfonso said, and you have to keep moving forward. So I think that's really important to put out there, and it is very difficult.
Well, and it's it just adds also to the ability to multiply your content, right? Mm. So, for example, us going live, what we could do with this is save the video, then from there take chunks and bits and post that on Instagram and this and that. If we don't want to do video, we can take this and cut the video in a video editing software such as like Camtasia. And the glare on my glasses is annoying me. Like a video editing software like Camtasia, and take away the video and just have audio. And now we have it in our DNC Marketing podcast. Mm-hmm. From there, if we wanted to, again, same idea, right? You can take those little chunks and put them into different sorts of audio forms, maybe into emails, things like that. Even something as simple as, then the actual video itself can go on YouTube, so then you can grow like your YouTube following. There's just so many facets that you can do when you go live. Oh, and then of course, something like take the audio, transcribe it, and then you have like a long form blog post. Mm-hmm. Depending on how long you talked and how deep you went, you may have one blog post, 2, 3, 4. You don't have to necessarily worry about like creating all that, which then goes into SEO, which then goes into backlinking, and it's just there's kind of a ripple effect off just one piece of content. You can create 30 different pieces.
Yeah, and that's why we're such big fans of video, because you can do so much with it, and it's basically like an easy place to start too. You could start with a blog post, for example, but then you'd need to like create that blog post, write it out and everything, get your thoughts in order, and then you'd have to record it with a video as like a script. And from people who don't usually work from scripts and are just now starting to with like the masterclasses and different things that we're trying to do to make sure we're not missing any information that we share with you. Working from a script is not easy. Especially if you're going to memorize it, it's even more difficult depending on how long that video is going to be. But if you're going to use something like a teleprompter, like learning how to do that, like you see people on news stations, or if you watch, shows like John Oliver, you have to learn how to do it a certain way and sound like you're not reading. So like there's a lot of difficulty that goes in that. But if you just like have your points, shoot your video about the topic you want to cover, and then pull from there, man, it makes life so much easier. Yeah.
I think the first time we used a teleprompter, we were just like staring right at the camera and reading it verbatim and doing a lot of other things. Like we were just like, hello, my name is Julio. How are you? Welcome to our DNC Marketing podcast. It was absolutely terrible. It was horrible.
Yeah. So today we want to talk about staying on track. So pulling us back on track and how you can stay motivated like that. So we've got a couple of options that we've used. First one is SMART goals. And if you're in the course, like we harp on SMART goals. It's a relatively simple concept, and it's something that people just don't use properly. So SMART goals, help me out with this. What does it stand for? Start specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and
trackable,
timely.
Or timely.
Yeah.
I learned it as trackable. She learned it as timely.
Yeah. So basically what you're doing is you're taking a big goal and you're pulling it down, you're chunking it down into these different things. Yeah. So for example, we wanted to launch 12 masterclasses throughout the next year, like the next 12 months. Mm-hmm. What that means is now we got to break it down. So we're going to focus in on the first masterclass and get that process down first.
Right.
Okay, so what goes into that first masterclass? Well, you've got things like web pages, landing pages, Facebook ads, the actual content itself. Are we going to do coursework, emails, like all these different things? Okay, let's set a deadline for each thing that we want to do. Obviously, we can't do all of that ourselves. I mean, you could, but it's just going to take so much longer. So now we've got our team. Now we're going to assign things to our team. You're going to tackle this. You're going to tackle this. These are going to be your deadlines. This is exactly what I want you to do, and have it to me so that we can talk about it, have a meet, like all of these different things that go into it. So especially when you're assigning to team members, and I highly encourage you, if you have it in your marketing budget, to at least employ a VA a few hours a week to help you get some things done. Right? But when you assign to that VA, you've got to be incredibly specific, and sometimes like shoot a Loom video, write out a tutorial or instructions or things like that, telling them exactly what you want them to do, and even the process you go about doing it so that they know every step of the way what you want.
Yeah, you don't want to make any assumptions that they just magically know what you and your business are about and what you want to do.
Right. Well, and one of our big frustrations is when people come to us and say like, man, I hired a VA and they just messed everything up. And so our first question is, okay, how did you train them? And then we get crickets.
Right.
Like, what do you mean train them? I hired a professional. No. Yes, you hired somebody who's an expert in their field, but you still have to work with them. You still have to train them on what you like done in your business, the processes you go about doing things.
Right.
It's incredibly important, and you cannot have high expectations if you never train the people you're working with.
Yeah. And, you know, it's that old saying of you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, right? So, like, you also want to make sure you allocate a proper budget for a proper person, because the smaller the budget, you tend to get more novices and people who don't have the experience. We had one, for example, that initially we were, like, looking over his resume. We were looking over the things that he did. We were like, wow, you know, this guy sounds really good. It sounds like it's a dream come true. And yeah, he's a little more expensive than what we were hoping for, but okay. And now we hire people that are much more expensive than what even he was doing. But at the time, we thought we could get away with, you know, something a little, And it was very evident very quickly that either someone else wrote that, or he spent just a giant amount of time doing, editing these piece of contents that he sent as his samples, because what he actually produced for us, even though we talked about what we wanted exactly and all that stuff, what he actually produced for us was just garbage. It was just really, really bad. And again, this is from somebody that was claiming to be a professional. So again,
and his samples were pretty good.
His samples were good. So that's like, you gotta also understand that not everybody's gonna make it, right? It's just like hiring for a business, I should say. Like, sometimes you just hit it off the bat and you have a stellar workforce. There are other times when, you hire somebody that you thought was going to be good, and then it turns out that they're the rotten apple, and it makes it pretty evident pretty quick. And
this all goes into, like, as an entrepreneur, you reach a level in your business where you're not the only one anymore, right? Yeah. You can start out as a solopreneur, but to grow, a lot of times, depending on your goals with your business, you're going to have to take on that CEO mindset.
Yeah.
And what that means is letting go of a lot of tasks and taking on a more managerial role, right? So what are the things that you have to do in your business? We have to be face on camera, right? Because it's our business. We are producing the content. There are a lot of things in the business that we prefer to do, but don't have to do. Right? So, like, letting go of some of our own copy, which as copywriters is very difficult, right? Especially as, like, myself, a big control freak. It's very hard to let go and let someone else do that work that I have been so used to doing, not just for myself, but for all of our clients.
Right.
And we still do tons of client work ourselves. Yeah. The control freak aspect of us, right? But letting go of those types of things, one, it was really incredibly important because in your business, you don't see a lot of the gaps. You may be the expert in your field, but when you do those tasks for your own business, you're not seeing a lot that's happening. You're missing things because you're too close. You've gotten used to certain habits and things. When somebody who is not involved in the business, that third party, comes in and takes a look and knows what they're doing, again, with training and all that, they can see things that you can't. And so that's why it's incredibly important to employ those people. So that, anyway, specificity with that. Measurable. Huge fan of deadlines. As, like, we're copywriters. I'm also a huge blogger, and working from deadlines was an absolute must to get that work done.
Real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt, but when we're talking about SMART goals, make sure you're also utilizing the SMART goals even for hiring.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that, because what you want is some sort of timeline. You don't want a project, right? That being because what we were just saying is you need to be able to teach, right? But that being said, you don't want somebody that you need to be teaching for the next 6 months, right? So say like, hey, I'm going to give this person 2 weeks, and if they, I'm going to contact them. We're going to go on a 1-hour phone call twice for the next 2 weeks. And if by the time the 2 weeks is done, they're still not getting it, they're not producing well, I'm just going to go ahead and move on. Like anytime you sign up for like Fiverr or Free Up or whatever the case is, you'll have multiple bids. So you'll have people just waiting. And then you just say, hey, listen, this isn't working. Thank you so much for your time. Let me go ahead and go with someone else. And
we can go into another masterclass. That's actually another great, not masterclass, topic that we can do on Tuesdays, another series on how we hire in our business and the processes we go through, and all of the stuff we have set up ahead of time to make sure people are meeting their training deadlines and meeting our standards.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that we do that goes into that. And we can go over that in another series. Let us know if that's something you're interested in. Do you want us to do an entire series on how we hire and train people for our business? We want to make sure we're tackling the things that are helpful to you.
Right.
So with that, measurable. Deadlines. Deadlines for yourself, deadlines for your team, and keep in mind, you're going to need to set the deadline for your team well ahead of what you expect the deadline, the true blue deadline to be, right? Because you want to make sure to look over things. Yeah. You want to make sure that if there's a problem, there's time to correct it. Let's see.
Then you have, actionable.
Actionable. Yeah. Right. This is a big deal because people will set goals that are just too high and mighty. I want to make $1 million. Okay. What are you going to do to make $1 million? I'm going to sell my product. Okay, how? Let's break it on down. What are the actions you're going to take? And this might mean actions you want completed in a month. Okay, what do I need to do every week to make sure that month is done? Okay, now what do I need to do every day to make sure I'm hitting those weekly goals? I have gotten so far as to break it down by hour, and I do want to address my planning problem if we have time. And Regine actually said she has something similar to this when she responded to our post yesterday in the public group. So I'll just do it now because I want to. When you break things down so far, it becomes more of a distraction than helpful. Me personally, it's a coping mechanism. I'm a big planner. I'm an A-type personality, and I will take out my pen and my paper and I'll start to make lists when I feel overwhelmed. And at first, that's really helpful. I'm like, okay, I know what I need to do to get this particular project done. But at some point, I will now take these tasks on my list and I'll start breaking them down even further to the point where then I become overwhelmed because now I have too much on my list to do. When in reality, I just need to focus in on the one thing that actually moves the needle, right?
Or when something goes awry.
Yeah.
Then it's all of a sudden everything else. It's a cascading effect, right? You see one thing that you said, I need to get this done today. Now all of a sudden you're realizing, oh, I can't get it done today. Or whatever the case, I can't get it done this week, right? Or especially if it's a big thing like that. I can't get it done this week because of blank. Like the funeral that we were just at. Mm-hmm. Well, the deeper, for example, using Darian's, the deeper she goes, the worse the overwhelm is. The more she's just like, if I can't get it done this week, and that means next week's pushback. And if next week's pushback, then this is pushback. And if that's pushback, I have to be at work to do this. And then that, and then it becomes this thing where you start to add to the stress. You start to add to the fear and the unknowing. Will this ever work at all now? Everything's ruined.
Yeah. So while it's important to make things actionable, while it's important to make sure you're planning and you're making those to-do lists and things like that. Thank you, Alfonso. He wrote out there our letters for us. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time attached. Yeah. So there's a lot of different versions of that. But in actionable, when I make my list, what I'm trying to do now is make sure I'm focusing in on the big thing.
Yeah.
So right now the big thing is their masterclasses. And we're doing everything we can to make sure those masterclasses are just mind-blowingly, incredibly helpful and free, which was a big deal for us. We wanted to make sure we gave this information away for free to help people make progress without having to pull money out of their pocket right away, right? Because we're big believers in you need to set this groundwork before you're putting money into ads, for example. You need to have a certain knowledge base and figure things out with experts before you before you're too heavily invested and you can't afford to make a turnaround, right?
Right. Exactly. Domino effect.
Domino effect, Carolyn. Yeah. And we've seen that done many times where people have like put their all into this one particular strategy because this one particular coach told them this was the right thing to do, and it didn't work out for their business, and now they're left with not a whole lot to make a change. So we find it really important to just deliver as much knowledge as possible so you can make an educated decision about what you want to do in your business.
Right.
So back to the planning and everything. Focusing in on the one thing. And if you haven't read the book, The One Thing, I'm reading it right now. It's actually really, really incredibly helpful. A lot of that goes with mindset. For me, it's a coping mechanism, right? So mindset, whenever I start to get overwhelmed, I'll start to plan. And now I realize that that's my coping mechanism. And so I take a step back and I plan the one thing. I look at my one thing and I focus on that, and that helps. If you don't plan, if you're a procrastinator and like it's not a coping mechanism for you, if you have a hard time achieving things, these actionable steps, these actionable tasks are going to be the most important thing for you because you're looking at the steps you need to take. So make sure if you're writing down an actionable step, it's something like write an email this week, right? Write an email over blank topic this week. Or even like a repetitive thing. Write an email every Monday about the live that's happening or something like that. Make sure you're creating something so actionable that you can sit down and start work right away. You don't have to think about like, what did I mean by that?
Yeah. And like as Alfonso put down, there are different variations or versions to this, but they're generally all saying the same thing. Like when I learned it, I too learned the A to be attainable as opposed to actionable. So it's the same general concept. It's just different wording. So like when I think of it as far as setting up a SMART goal, the version of attainable to me is more like make sure that you're not overshooting.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing like as you mentioned first, like I want to sell $1 million. Okay, how are you going to do it? Right. So when I did it as a sales manager, that was the same concept. It was, okay, so let's see an attainable goal. They would go, okay, well, for example, at one of the facilities I worked at, our average invoice, I guess you could say, it was about $500, more or less. So it was like, okay, how much do you want to sell this week? Okay, I want to sell $30,000. So as a sales manager, I had to be like, okay, so for the last, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is, your average has been $10,000. So how are you going to sell $30,000 this week? And why haven't you been selling $30,000 every week for the last 6 weeks? If this week is the one that you can do it. So it's when I had to bring them back down to reality, right? And I had to say, okay, so tell you what. Instead of shooting for 30,000, because the other part to it was I was the boss, right? So they wanted to impress. They were like, oh, good, a big number. But what I wanted was to see something that was attainable to them, so I can continue that growth process, right? So when I would come into this particular store, I'd be like, okay, what are we going to do here? They would say, okay, I've been doing 10,000 every week for the last 4 weeks. And I'd say, okay, let's bring it up a little bit. Let's shoot for 12,000 this week. Just $2,000 more. That's just like 4 more tickets, whatever. You're like, okay, let's do that. If they hit that, now I would set a pattern. You did 12. I want you to do 12 again. Show me consistency. Yeah. They hit 12 again. That third time I came to visit that store, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to now do, let's bump it up a bit more. Let's give you a little bit more. Let's hit 15. Let's see if we can hit 15. And then you just keep doing that until eventually, they're hitting a consistency where they're hitting, all right, now you're doing 18 to 20,000 a week. Now I know that, and if I start to see you drop down, I can start to say, hey, what's going on? Why aren't you hitting it? This was what you were capable of before. What is it from there? Right.
And that's another thing too, is while you're talking, I was thinking about doing too much too fast, right? So I'm a 0 to 60 personality. Once I decide I want to do something, I want to do it like full on. Give me all the things I need to get it done. I don't care how much sleep I'm going to lose. I'm just going to get it done. The problem with that is I will start off really well. I want to run a marathon. I'll start off running, multiple miles a day, every single day until my shins start to hurt, until I'm exhausted, until I'm cranky, until I burn out to the point where I'm just like for the marathon, for example, when I was training, I had a really hard time walking. I had hurt my shin so badly because I had done it improperly by starting out doing too much, too fast, in the wrong shoes, with improper form, other things.
I have such a good marathon story.
Oh, let's not. Please don't share that. No,
Okay.
I don't want to share that. But that's the point, is doing too much too fast is also a thing. Like metering your energy levels, metering the actions that you're taking, making sure you are doing things within your capability. This is also where that one thing comes in really handy, right? Is if you're focusing in on the one thing that moves the needle, the one thing that moves the needle, I'm going to say that again, because a lot of people will do busy work, like I'm going to make sure I'm writing a whole bunch of social media posts for Instagram. Well, it's keeping you busy, but is it moving the needle? Are you converting? Right?
Yeah.
Whereas
not just followership, but are you actually converting? 'Cause at the end of the day, I mean, granted, it depends on what you're doing, right? Like, for example, if you're listening to this and you're like, you know what my goal is? My goal is to be an influencer. Then maybe followers is your thing, in which case then, hey, you know, you need to be pulling out your phone everywhere you go and taking pictures of your food and all that stuff. If your goal is for blog posts, you know, just to create website traffic, then maybe it's a little bit different. But so the idea is still about what is attainable or what is relevant to your goals. Is your goal to make money in terms of converting, in terms of actually selling a physical product? And if so, just creating random posts where you're taking pictures of your food or taking pictures of your dog sleeping may not necessarily correlate to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So making sure you're doing something and metering that energy level so you can sustain it.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So sustainment is also a big deal. And that's really difficult for me. So like pulling myself back and making sure I'm focusing in. And hey, it's okay to have some free time as long as you're getting things done. Like we're workaholics. So having free time for us is like, oh, I have an hour where I don't have anything to do and I can sit and watch TV. Like that's not okay. We got to find something to do right now.
Right.
But understanding that as long as those things are getting done properly, as long as, you know, those needle moving tasks are being accomplished and you're actually seeing the conversion and seeing things come in, starting to move into the CEO mindset of my team's got it. They've got it taken care of. Now I need to move into the space of thinking and vision to continue growth. So that was actionable. R. So realistic. Kind of ties in, relevant, kind of ties in, right? Again, if your goal is to be an influencer, followers might be where you need to start. If your goal is to run an agency, you may not necessarily need a whole bunch of followers, but you do need some high ticket accounts that you can tackle on a consistent basis. Right? So maybe focusing in on the people who are going to convert with the highest ticket is better, not necessarily going all over social media and finding followers.
Right.
If you're selling products, okay, so again, maybe you don't need 100 million followers, but you do need the right connections.
Yeah.
So putting forth money into ads once you know what you're doing there to target the right people, making connections in your industry for maybe brick and mortar stores if you're working with wholesale, or getting yourself into magazines for exposure, like different things like that are relevant to the goals and realistic for what you want. Not necessarily like that strategy worked for that person in that niche. I'm going to do that because that's what success looks like for me.
Right.
Yeah. And then the last one is time attached. So again, like deadlines. If you want to do something really big, start breaking those deadlines down to start tackling all those tasks relatively quickly. And that brings us into like Regine and I have something really big in common, and she's in the public group. And if you're here this right now, Regine, say hi. She might be catching the replay. But again, with the planning problem and focusing in on the one thing, if you don't know what the Eisenhower Box is, go ahead and Google that right now and pull it up. I have found this to be really, really helpful. And when I started to research it for this live and to learn more about it, I thought it was called the 4 square method, and that's actually something else. So if I put the 4 square method, what I mean is the Eisenhower Box. And basically it's broken down into 4 quadrants. And you've got urgent and not urgent at the top. And on the side, you've got important and not important. And so you've got some overlap in those boxes right there. So the box where that intersects with the urgent and important, the most important thing, that's your do box. And that's what you need to be doing right now. That's your one thing, what you need to focus on. When you move over and you have the not urgent and important, that's when you need to decide. So schedule a time to do it. Put it on your list of things that are going to come up and that you're going to schedule, that you're going to make sure you want to get done, but it's not the thing you're working on right now. If you look down, it's the not important but urgent box. That's your delegate box.
Not important.
Not important but urgent. So if it needs to get done right now, but it's not necessarily important. For example, you notice there's a broken link or some broken links on your website, or that blog post needs to get uploaded, like you can delegate that. That is not important, but it is urgent, right? It is timely, especially if you're on like a content schedule.
Right.
And then all the way underneath the not urgent and not important, that's something you just need to get rid of entirely. If it's neither urgent nor important, what is it adding to your business, to your life? So if you break up those 4 squares and start using that to kind of prioritize the things you need to do, that can help you stay motivated just from the fact that you now have clear priorities on what's going to help you succeed in your business.
Yeah. When I learned that, it was called like big rocks, small rocks.
Yeah.
It's basically just prioritizing what is going to fill up the space of your business, the most efficiently.
Right. And I think I've heard that story is where when you fill up that jar with rocks, right, you've got big rocks that you put in. And then you fill that jar up with some pebbles. And then you fill that jar up with sand. And then you fill that jar up with water. And so you can see, like, every time you're putting more and more into this jar, you are prioritizing. You're filling it up a little bit more. And especially when you start with those big rocks, you're able to get more done, right? Starting with the big rocks means you're now able to fill in with pebbles. Then you're able to fill in with sand and then water. But if you start with sand, for example, you have no room left for those big rocks or those pebbles. If you start with water and you start dropping in those big rocks, well, the water's going to splash out. So knowing what your biggest priorities are and then working down from there is what's going to help you be most productive. It's what's going to help you get more done. And in that way, stay most motivated to make sure you're moving the needle in your business. Let's see. 4 square marathon. Okay, Scrum Board was the last thing I wanted to tackle. Did you want to say anything with the Eisenhower Box or the rocks or anything?
Nope. That's about all I was just trying. Sorry, I was not trying to just ignore everybody. I was trying to read the comments on my iPad because I have such. It's not terrible vision, but I don't have my glasses because I don't want like a lot of what's that called? Glare, duh. Oh yeah, since I don't want a lot of glare, I was trying to read it on the iPad, so that way if anybody said anything, I can answer it.
Yeah, that's all right. We've got the comments right here too.
Yeah, but I can't.
Oh, you can't read it?
I need binoculars.
Glasses. The Scrum Board was the last thing I wanted to talk about, and it's just another tool. This is something we use in Asana. It's kind of like that 4 square method, but it's more linear. So I think in so many different like tangents that I need to have things broken out differently. I've got a physical planner, I've got a to-do list notebook, I've got a digital planner, calendar. All of these things help me stay focused on different things, but can be overwhelming to other people. So we've got different options available for you.
Did you just point at me?
I did. He doesn't like all of my mini planning things.
But
the Scrum Board is basically what helps you move in a linear fashion to get a certain project done. And it can start with like the backlog, all the things you want to do, right? And then in the next block, you have the currently working on. Mm-hmm. Then you've got done, and then you've got validate. So that's how we have it broken out. And this particular method was popular in like software industries when they were going through crunch and they needed to make sure they were getting like a video game out or some kind of software out really, really quickly. They had to get these things done in this particular order and have these people in charge of everything. Yeah. So now this is spilled over everywhere else because it's just a really great quick time management technique. So in your backlogs, you've got everything you want to accomplish, right? Consider it your wish list. Then in your current working block, whatever it is you're working on now, and this should be like 1 or 2 things. This should not be a whole bunch of things. In those 1 or 2 things, those tasks, you can have like subtasks that you're delegating out to other people or that need to be accomplished in order for this bigger goal to get done, but it needs to be relatively actionable, relatively small so you can focus on it. Then of course the done is what you slide them over into when you've completed them, and the validate is when you've seen it work. So for example, what I do is in the done column, I need to move multiple things before it can be validated. For the masterclass, for example, the web pages and the emails and the webinars and different things that need to go together to complete a funnel, that might be my the big task. And in the currently working column, I've got like write emails for masterclass, shoot masterclass, create content for masterclass. Once all those are done, they then go into validation phase, where I need to make sure this funnel is complete. There are no gaps, there's nothing broken, everything looks good. Once that's done, they can be moved over to validate, and now we know that those are true blue completed, and we can move on to the next thing. This is also really helpful for our team, again, because they know what stage we're in and what they need to be working on, and they know what questions to ask to keep moving. Bleh.
Yeah.
So
basically just, which also goes into, as you were mentioning the team, the idea of trust but validate, right? So like make sure, as you assign tasks, make sure that they're actually completing them. Eventually, of course, through training and all that, you'll get to the point where you just kind of trust their general workflow. You trust the hours they're putting in, that they're billing you, they're billing hours. You're trusting that they are doing the proper thing. But again, just trust but validate.
Yeah.
Make sure that it's happening, but then every once in a while, make sure that, hey, did this need to take 4 hours to complete? Okay, I guess I could see that. Or no way, this should have been 30 minutes max.
Yeah.
You don't want to just ever assume that you're going to be taken care of. There's been many an athlete that have lost millions and millions of dollars because their manager, who they were like, this guy's basically my father, took everything.
Yeah. Singers too, right? Like you see that in media a lot. But that goes back into like the blog post we were talking about in the last Staying Motivated episode.
Yeah.
When it's like the dirty hands approach is know those tasks. Those tasks in and out so that when you sign them, it's supposed to take you 30 minutes to get this done.
Right.
You're in training, you're kind of new to the company. I'll give you 45, I'll give you an hour, whatever it might be.
Right.
But ultimately, when you get good at this, you need to have this down. This is the time I expect, and be clear too with those. And we should get into this with another series, but be clear on your expectations for that individual as well.
Exactly.
Yep.
There you go.
So I hope this was helpful. For me, setting goals, smart, like actionable, relatively easy to accomplish goals keeps me motivated because I can see progress. And if that's the kind of person that you are, if you need to see progress in your business in order to stay motivated and keep moving forward, I want to hear from you in the comments. I want to know, like, hey, we're the same, so that I'm not the only one who feels this way. But I hope this was helpful. We gave you several options here, and we talked about different things and problems that we've run into in trying to solve this. And we want to know what you'd like to hear from us next. Continuing with the Staying Motivated series, or moving on to something more pertinent like the training or whatever.
Yeah, we have freaking 20,000 different ideas. Like
literally.
maybe not quite literally, but I mean, we have pages and pages and pages filled up where it's like, okay, this could be a topic. This could be a topic. So, but if there is something specific that you are like, I really want y'all to talk about this or cover this or whatever the case is, just let us know.
Yep.
More than happy to.
And with that, we will leave you. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah. We will go live again every Tuesday talking about a certain topic in a series to help you accomplish your goals, do things that you need to do, whatever it is, deal with your mindset. And then again on Fridays, we do a live Q&A at the same time. So make sure you're joining us every Tuesday and Friday for those lives, and keep an eye out for the debut of the masterclass coming up very quickly.
There you go. Again, we appreciate you. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday.
Yep.
I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.